Well, hello again sports fans. Yes, it's yet another disaster video with my Z84 wing. Unfortunately, I can't blame this one on the airframe or the flight controller. It's all my own work. If you've been following this saga, you'll know that a couple of weeks earlier I lost video on a long distance flight and this was the end result. I eventually managed to locate the crash site, and quite surprisingly it wasn't a complete write-off. I was able to carry out repairs. So this is the trimming flight after those repairs were carried out. Unfortunately, the only footage of this flight is from the DVR, and the only sound is going to be the sound of me nattering on and on endlessly. So I've launched it in manual mode, and as you can see it survived, which is always a good thing when you retrim a plane. I've reduced the throws on the controls, but she's still pretty twitchy. She also seems to want to roll over on her back, and it takes me quite a while to tame it down. So once I do, I slip it into balance mode and just have a bit of a fly around just to see how it's reacting to the new trim settings, and it seems to be fine. The plan at this stage is not to fly out too far, just keep it within 1 kilometre or so and test out all of the flight controller functions to make sure they're working still. One of the problems on the previous flight was that the flight controller didn't seem to have much control authority on the right hand side. It didn't seem to be able to hold a heading in heading hold mode or in return to home mode, and one of the things I've done is change the right hand elevator servo, and I'm keen to see if that has actually fixed the problem during this flight. I certainly don't seem to be having any control problems at the moment while in balance mode. She's turning right and left without any real trouble at all and flying reasonably level with my hands off the sticks. So one of the most important functions for me is the return to home. So I take it straight out in front of me about 1 kilometre and slip it into return to home, and she turns around nicely and starts heading back. While she is heading back in the direction of home, she isn't actually lined up on the home point, which is the square dam next to the field. Mind you, I haven't recalibrated the home point since crashing into that tree, so it's quite possible that some of the controller's brain cells have been scrambled a bit. So I don't do anything about it. I decide to wait and see what it does when it gets home, and what it does is flies straight over the top of me and keeps on flying for some distance. She seems to be maintaining the altitude, so I'm not really concerned at this point. I have noticed on earlier flights that it can take some time the first time you engage return to home for it to realise where home is, but it seems to be taking longer than normal here. So I'm thinking of taking control when she leans over quite violently and starts heading back. That violent first turn is consistent with other flights I've had, and she settles back on a course to the actual home point, and once there she starts circling quite calmly within about 100 metres of the home point, so I'm pretty happy that it seems to be working okay. I'm also not seeing any dropouts of the GPS data, which is comforting. So next up is testing the heading and altitude hold mode. The small bars on the end of the arrow in the control mode icon indicate that I have my hands off the sticks and that the F2S is managing the heading and altitude controls. I'm a bit disappointed to see that it still seems to be exhibiting that left-hand drift that it was in the previous flight. So I turn her around and bring her back closer to home. At this stage I've put it into balance mode and I'm having a bit of a low level flight around the field just to see how it's reacting to the controls. Everything seems to be going fine. It's about this time that I noticed that I've been in the air for 20 minutes and I'm not really sure how much longer I can go. The battery monitor's shown that I've used just over 2,000 out of the 3,500 milliamp hour capacity of the lithium ion pack I'm using. It's my first lithium ion pack, and I've just got no real idea how far down you can take them, so I decide I'll just keep flying until I see some sort of drop in performance. So I decide to switch it into heading altitude hold mode and see if it's still drifting. I decide I'm a little bit low, so I feed in some up elevator till I get up over 80 metres and then let go of the sticks and leave it to its own devices. I'm pleased to see that this time it seems to be maintaining the heading without too much trouble at all. I'll let it get out to just past a kilometre and then input some aileron control to turn around and start bringing it back towards home, and then let go of the sticks again. And once again she seems to have no trouble maintaining the heading that I've set. So I'm feeling pretty pleased with myself at this point. Everything seems to be working as it should. I decided to do another longer test of the heading hold mode and end up taking it out past a kilometre when I noticed that the voltage monitor has dropped down to 7 volts. The timer's showing that I've been up in the air for over 30 minutes, and even though I know that I shouldn't be taking a 3S pack down below 7.5 volts, I don't seem to be experiencing any degeneration in performance at this stage. Nevertheless, just as I'm thinking that it would be prudent to turn around and get closer to home in case the pack does suddenly collapse, she starts to misbehave. I didn't notice at the time, but now looking at the video I can see that the flight controller has switched out of heading hold mode and put it into manual mode. All I know is that she's suddenly a lot harder to handle, and I put it down to the fact that the battery must be running down, and start focusing on getting it back as close to home as possible before it gives up completely. I do notice that the battery monitor is showing that I've now used over 3200 of my 3500 milliamp hours, so I'm quite surprised that it's still flying at all. As I watch this video, I'm now also noticing the amp draw has gone up fairly dramatically, and I don't know whether that was me panicking with the throttle trying to get home, or whether it's a characteristic of the battery's output as it drops to its low voltage. It probably was me on the throttle. I see the speed was up over 50k for the first time in a while, but that didn't last long. The speed suddenly started dropping and the battery monitor showed that I had 0 volts. I also have zero control over the plane from this point on, and she doesn't stay in the air for much longer. Well, here she is. It's ejected the battery. Looks like there's a crack in the front where the battery came out. The camera is disengaged, but it's still attached to the mieage. But the SD card doesn't appear to be in. Well, it looks like I did put the card in, and I can't believe that I've actually found it. It's right next to this little hole where something hard has hit. Could be the battery, but judging by the amount of dust on the lens of the mieage, it's probably the mieage. So here we have our card. 16 gig, which is nice to have. Can't believe I found it. I'm just so lucky.